The neon lights of the gas station flickered like dying fireflies, casting uneven shadows across the cracked asphalt. Alina Cross stepped out of the convenience store, balancing a bottle of water and a bag of trail mix, her boots crunching softly against gravel. She had just finished her long shift volunteering with a veteran support group, assisting former soldiers with reintegration programs. Most people would see her as a quiet, helpful civilian, but those who knew the shadows of war understood she was far more than she appeared. They called her Reaper once, and those who knew the name remembered it with a mixture of awe and fear. The lot was empty except for three men lingering near a beat-up sedan, muttering among themselves. Their eyes flicked to her as she crossed the parking lot, casual but alert, a posture honed by years in situations where a single misstep could mean death. Alina didn't panic. Instinctively, she noted their positions, their stances, and the slight tremor in the man on the left's hands. They were amateur criminals, but someone had trained them to follow instructions. The first man stepped directly into her path, eyes narrowing. "Phone, wallet, now," he demanded, his voice trembling but attempting authority. Alina slowed but didn't stop. Her mind calculated probabilities in milliseconds. There were three assailants, each armed in a slightly different way, none appearing to anticipate that she might react. She adjusted her pace to keep herself perpendicular to the nearest streetlight, maximizing visibility of her surroundings while maintaining a path away from the vehicle that could corner her. The second man slipped behind her, forcing her into a slight pivot. The third, shaking and desperate, pressed the cold metal muzzle of a gun against the back of her head. The scent of gun oil and fear mixed in the humid night air. Time seemed to stretch, each heartbeat loud, each breath a countdown. Everything in Alina's body screamed fight or flight, but she didn't freeze. She was calm, calculated. Her Navy SEAL training had embedded responses deeper than instinct, deeper than fear. She breathed slowly, methodically, letting the rhythm steady her pulse. "You really shouldn't have done that," she said softly, loud enough for the gunman to hear. There was no fear in her voice, only a quiet, unnerving certainty. The man hesitated. The slightest twitch, the minute shift in her weight, the tension in her shoulders, it was all deliberate. She had been here before, many times. Life and death decisions boiled down to a single fraction of a second. Alina shifted her stance, pivoting on her left foot, positioning her body at an angle that allowed her to spring backward but also forward if necessary. The man holding the gun reacted slightly too late. Alina's left hand grabbed the wrist of the gun with a practiced grip, twisting sharply, leveraging his weight against him. His finger slipped off the trigger. She delivered a precise knee strike to his thigh, dropping him to the ground. The second man lunged, attempting to grab her arm. She sidestepped, used his momentum to spin him into the first, and they collapsed in a heap, cursing and groaning. Her third attacker, frozen for a split second, realized the error of underestimating her, but that hesitation cost him. Alina's hand found the back of his neck, and with a quick twist and shove, he stumbled forward onto the asphalt. In under 10 seconds, the three men were incapacitated, sprawled and groaning. Alina stood, breathing evenly, eyes scanning for any further threats. The street was empty. The neon lights hummed. And then she noticed it, a small metallic glint near the first man's pocket, a coin engraved with a trident and skull emblem. Her fingers itched, and when she picked it up, she realized the chilling truth. It was her unit's challenge coin, a symbol of the mission she had left behind, the work no one was supposed to know about, the very unit whose existence the Navy officially denied. Her stomach tightened. The last time she had held that coin, she had thrown it into the Pacific after a high-risk mission, so sensitive it was erased from all records. And now, someone had sent it as a message. The distant wail of sirens cut through the night, growing louder with each passing second. Police cars swerved into the lot, lights flashing red and blue. Officers jumped out, weapons drawn, shouting commands she didn't need to follow. Her presence alone had made the situation unstable, but her calm, controlled demeanor suggested she was not the threat. A young officer approached cautiously, flashlight scanning the ground around her boots. "Ma'am, are you okay? What happened here?" His voice was a mix of concern and confusion. Elena closed her hand around the coin, feeling the cold metal press against her palm. "Just a mugging," she said, voice calm and even. "I defended myself, that's all." The officer studied her, unsure, but before he could question her further, one of the injured men groaned and whispered something. Elena leaned in, attentive despite herself. The man's eyes were wide with terror, darting between her and the police. They told us not to run. They said if we failed," his voice broke, "he'll come for us too." Her pulse quickened. "Who?" she demanded, though part of her already knew. He swallowed hard. "We only know him as the commander." Her breath caught. One man in naval special warfare had used that code name. Only one. A man she once trusted above all, a man whose life she thought ended years ago in a violent mission gone wrong. DNA confirmed his death. A funeral. A folded flag. Closure. And now, his operatives were in front of her, sending messages. Elena's mind raced, connecting dots too rapidly to be healthy. If the commander was alive, it wasn't a casual threat. This was deliberate, calculated. A hunt designed to bring her back into a world she had spent years trying to leave behind. She turned her back to the flashing police lights moving toward her truck. The coin burned in her hand. The officer's voice called after her, but she ignored it. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. An unknown number. She didn't answer yet. She needed to assess the scene, the angles, the possibilities. One call could alert the commander, she was aware, could trigger his next move. Sliding into the driver's seat, she breathed in deeply, shoulders tense. Her eyes flicked to the coin again. Someone knew her. Someone had sent 3 armed men to test her reactions, and crucially they had left a trail, a breadcrumb she could follow. If she wanted answers, she would follow them, carefully, strategically. The sirens reached a crescendo in the lot as the officers began taking statements, but Elena was already calculating her next move. This was no longer about defending herself. This was about confronting a ghost from her past, a ghost who wasn't dead, a ghost who, for reasons she didn't yet understand, wanted her attention. Her truck roared to life, tires spinning softly against gravel. She glanced in the rearview mirror. The parking lot, empty moments ago, now seemed alive with potential threats, lights from passing cars, shadows flitting behind corners, the feeling that unseen eyes were watching. She tucked the coin into her jacket pocket, pressing it close as a reminder, not of fear but of purpose. The commander had reached out, and she would respond. Her headlights cut through the darkness as she eased onto the highway, leaving the parking lot behind. The 3 men she had incapacitated were left in the wake of her swift justice, and the coin, the symbol of everything she had tried to bury, remained the singular question that would guide her night. Somewhere out there the commander had a plan, and Elena Cross Reaper was ready. The highway stretched ahead, empty and silent, except for the faint hum of her tires against the asphalt. Elena's mind raced, circling back to the coin in her pocket. The cold metal pressed against her side like a warning. She had carried this coin once, years ago, on missions that the Navy refused to acknowledge. The coin had been more than a symbol, it was a promise, a bond between those who operated in the shadows, a reminder of a life she had left behind. Now it was a message, and messages from ghosts were never good news. She pulled into a deserted rest stop and killed the engine. The hum of the night surrounded her, punctuated by the distant sounds of a coyote howling and the wind stirring through dry scrub. Her hands went to the coin again, turning it over, feeling the intricate etching, a trident overlaying a skull, numbers scratched along the rim, R13. Reaper. Mission 13. Her pulse quickened. That mission had been the last one officially recorded, the one that had cemented her reputation in clandestine circles and almost cost her life. She had thought she destroyed all evidence, including the coins. Yet here was one, held by strangers who had tried to take her life, or at least scare her. She knew immediately someone wanted her attention, but why and who? The three men in the parking lot were just messengers, pawns, amateurs trained to test her, but whoever controlled them was skilled, calculating, and confident. Too confident. Her phone vibrated, a single message lighting up the screen from an unknown number. "Reaper, we're not finished." A chill ran down her spine. The message was short, direct, and deliberate. Someone had tracked her, known her movements, anticipated her response. And this wasn't just about sending a warning. It was about sending a challenge. Alina exhaled slowly, letting the tension in her shoulders release just slightly. She had survived worse, much worse. She had been in the deserts of the Middle East, submerged in freezing rivers during covert reconnaissance, and trapped in situations where the only exit was through violence. Fear wasn't an option. It was a luxury she didn't have. She slid the coin back into her jacket pocket and started her truck again, heading toward the coordinates embedded in the message. They led to a remote area far from any populated towns, a place familiar, yet long abandoned. The location brought memories flooding back. Mission simulations, survival training, exercises that had honed her into the operator she was today. The kind of training that made others tremble with even a hint of threat. She drove in silence, ears alert to every sound, tires crunching gravel, the faint whistle of wind through a broken car mirror, the low hum of distant electricity lines. Every instinct screamed at her. The commander wasn't bluffing. He wasn't dead. And the men she had faced earlier were just the beginning. The journey was long and isolated. The desert stretched endlessly on either side of the highway, a silent witness to the tension mounting inside her. Alina reached for a map, tracing the route to the coordinates. The path wound through abandoned back roads, dotted with old gas stations and defunct motels. She noted every potential ambush point, every shadow where someone could be waiting. Her eyes flicked to the rearview mirror repeatedly, scanning for vehicles that shouldn't be there. And then she saw it, faint headlights far behind her moving with intent. Someone was following, not a random traveler, not a curious civilian. Trained hands aware of pursuit tactics, ensuring she stayed on the path they wanted her to follow. Alina's heartbeat remained steady. Her mind shifted seamlessly from observation to planning. She calculated speed, distance, road curves, potential exits. A SEAL's mind never truly relaxes, even when it seems calm. She recognized patterns in the vehicle's movements, slowing slightly on curves, mirroring her speed on straights, maintaining distance on downhill slopes. The tale was deliberate, skilled, precise. A sudden idea sparked. She slowed, allowing the pursuing vehicle to close in. Her hands moved deftly, fingers brushing against the seat belt, ready to adjust in an instant. She used the cover of a bend in the road, a small grove of dead trees, to shift positions, moving her truck off the main path without making it obvious. The lights of the pursuing car momentarily vanished. A calculated pause. She let them catch up, then accelerated, taking a series of hairpin turns that would force an inexperienced driver to falter. But her pursuers were not inexperienced. They mirrored her moves perfectly. She realized then, whoever sent the parking lot men had deployed more skilled operatives, possibly her former teammates. Operators who once ran alongside her. Allies once, now potential threats. The realization burned a mixture of anger and clarity. This was not a random act. The commander wanted her engaged. He wanted her attention, and he wanted her to follow a path that led directly to him. Night deepened. Stars scattered across the sky, a canopy of cold light over the desert. The air grew thin and dry, carrying the scent of dust and creosote. Her truck's engine hummed steadily as she approached a ridge overlooking a wide valley. There it was, an old military training facility buried among rocks and sand, seemingly abandoned but unmistakably maintained. Fences, distant lights, subtle movements. The place was alive. Not in use by the government, but alive with someone's authority. Controlled, monitored, dangerous. Alina parked at the edge of the ridge, surveying the facility. Her experience allowed her to interpret subtle signs, the timing of the lights, patterns in the shadows, slight disturbances in the sand suggesting recent movement. Someone had been expecting her. Someone had designed this moment, and that someone was powerful. Her mind worked through contingencies, probabilities, and exit strategies. Every step forward had to be deliberate, calculated, precise. She remembered the coin again pressing against her chest. R13, Mission 13. The mission had been classified, sealed, and erased from her life. Yet here it was, reintroduced into her world like a challenge thrown across time and space. Whoever had sent the coin knew her, knew what it meant, knew how to provoke her without immediately confronting her. This wasn't a simple threat, it was a summons. Alina checked her gear. Her jacket, boots, the small combat knife strapped to her thigh, everything was in place. She didn't expect the confrontation to be simple. She expected precision, calculation, resistance. And yet she felt a flicker of something long forgotten, anticipation. Not excitement, not fear, but the sharp focus of a warrior called back into the game. Her phone buzzed again, the same unknown number. Another message, "Don't come unprepared. Reaper, you've been warned." She didn't respond. There was no need. He wanted a reaction. She would not provide one, not yet. He wanted her engaged, but she would engage on her own terms. The first glimmers of dawn were breaking across the horizon when she finally moved. The highway behind her was empty. The valley ahead was silent but alive with hidden eyes. Alina's pulse remained steady, her senses alert, every muscle coiled, ready to spring. She touched the coin in her pocket again, letting its weight remind her of the past, the training, the battles she had survived. It reminded her of the code she lived by: precision, patience, lethal efficiency. She started the truck once more, descending the ridge toward the facility. Every second was measured, every turn calculated. Somewhere within those walls, someone, or something, awaited. The commander had returned from the dead and the game had begun. As the first light touched the desert floor, the silence of the valley was broken only by the hum of her engine and the faint, ominous movement in the shadows. Alina Cross, Reaper, was on the path toward confrontation. The desert morning was deceptively calm. The sun had begun its slow climb, casting long shadows across the valley, painting the rugged landscape with gold and copper hues. Yet for Alina there was no calm, only calculation, anticipation, and the heavy weight of the unknown. The coin in her jacket pressed against her chest like a heartbeat from the past, reminding her that her life had never truly left the shadows behind. Someone from her former life had reached out, and the message was clear. The commander was alive. She parked her truck a safe distance from the perimeter of the facility. Every instinct screamed caution. Years of special warfare training had taught her the value of patience and observation. She studied the compound from the ridge, scanning for cameras, guards, and any irregularities in the fencing. There were subtle signs that this place was active. The way the lights flickered in synchronized intervals, the faint disturbances in the sand near access points, and the precise timing of vehicle movements. This was no abandoned facility. This was a controlled, operational site. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. Another message from the same unknown number flashed on the screen. "Reaper, you've been quiet for a long time, too long, time to come home." The voice on the line was distorted, but she could recognize the cadence, the pauses, the deliberate inflection. It was unmistakable, the commander. He had survived the explosion years ago. Her memory of the blast, the smoke, the fire had become a nightmare replayed nightly. She had been told he was gone, that he was dead. That file, that funeral, that folded flag, they had all been lies. The message continued, "You shouldn't have retired. You're not meant for normal life." Alina exhaled slowly. Fear didn't enter her thoughts. There was only focus. If he was alive, it meant one thing. Someone had been planning this for months, maybe years. The three men at the gas station were a test, and she had passed. The real game was about to begin. She walked to the edge of the ridge, peering down at the facility below. The terrain was rough, rocky, and uneven, perfect for someone with her training to move unseen. Every footstep, every shift in balance was deliberate. She moved like a ghost, blending into the natural shadows, her senses heightened. The coin in her pocket was a constant reminder that she was being drawn back into a world she thought she had left behind. Her thoughts briefly drifted to her time in the Navy SEALs. The grueling training, the missions erased from history, the nights spent in survival drills under impossible conditions. The commander had been her mentor once, teaching her tactics that had saved her life countless times. But he had also been the one she had nearly died to protect, the one she had thought she lost forever. And now he was reaching out, not as a friend, but as a master manipulating a game she had no choice but to play. The facility below her began to stir. Guards patrolled the perimeter with methodical precision, their movements synchronized, almost mechanical. Alina noted every pattern, every gap, every opportunity for infiltration. She could see entrances, ventilation shafts, and points where she could bypass direct confrontation if needed. Yet part of her knew this wasn't just about stealth. The commander had summoned her for a reason, and he would expect her to face him. Her phone buzzed again. This time a distorted voice message played. "Reaper, time to come home or stay hidden and risk everything you love. The choice is yours, but choose wisely." Alina pressed her lips together. Choice. That was his game. He wanted to see if she would run or confront, if she would follow the trail he had laid. And she had always been a fighter, a survivor. Retreat was not in her nature. She adjusted her pack, checking the contents. Tactical flashlight, multi-tool folding knife, extra ammo for the SIG she always carried in the field, and a set of communication devices. Everything was in place. Her mind worked through contingencies, entry points, guard rotations, possible traps, and emergency extraction routes. She could handle combat, but she needed intelligence first. She needed to know exactly what she was walking into. With careful precision, she descended the ridge, moving from shadow to shadow. Her footsteps were silent on the rocky ground, each movement calculated to avoid detection. She noted the guards' positions, the timing of their patrols, the distance between them. Years of survival drills in unfamiliar terrain allowed her to merge with the environment, to become a part of it, unseen and unthreatened. As she neared a ventilation shaft along the perimeter, she crouched low, listening. Voices carried faintly on the dry air. Not many. Only a few guards inside the compound were moving about, performing routine checks. She could feel her pulse steady, the calm focus she relied on in every mission settling in. She was in her element. Her hand brushed against the coin in her jacket pocket. R13. Mission 13. It had been a mission of deception, survival, and lethal precision. That mission had tested every skill she possessed, pushing her to the edge of human endurance. And now it was coming back to her, a reminder that she had not truly left that life behind. Alina used the shadows to approach the fence. She studied the wiring, the posts, the points of weakness. One guard paused near a light source, shining a flashlight over her general direction. She froze, pressed herself flat against the rocks, and held her breath. The beam passed over her without pause. She exhaled slowly, moving a few feet closer to the entrance point she had identified. Her phone buzzed once more, this time an incoming call. The screen displayed an unknown number. She answered cautiously, pressing the phone to her ear. "Reaper," the voice said, smooth, controlled, and cold. "I see you've received my message. You've been quiet, too quiet. I almost missed you." The recognition in the voice, the familiarity of tone, sent a shiver down her spine. Not fear, but focus. "Commander," she said evenly, "you're alive." "I am," he replied, almost conversational. "And I've been waiting for this moment. You were supposed to stay hidden, retire quietly, but you couldn't resist the call of the old life, could you?" "I didn't come here for you," she said. Her voice was calm, measured. "I came here for answers. Why now? Why me?" "You'll find out soon enough," he said, a faint smile audible in his tone. "But first, a little reminder of why you never ignore the past." The line went dead. Silence returned, heavy and ominous. Alina clenched her jaw. This was it. No more signals, no more hints. The commander was here, and whatever awaited her inside that facility would be a confrontation of skill, strategy, and survival. She surveyed the compound one last time, noting every guard, every entry point, and every potential trap. Her mind ran through contingencies, escape routes, and tactical maneuvers. She checked her pack, ensuring every tool, every weapon was ready. She touched the coin in her pocket, feeling its weight as a reminder of her past and the path that had led her here. The compound's lights flickered slightly as the day broke fully across the valley. The facility was no longer just a location. It was a battleground, a test, and a trap, all rolled into one. She could sense the presence of the commander orchestrating events, anticipating her every move. And yet, she was not afraid. Alina took a deep breath, her body coiled with readiness. Every nerve, every muscle, every instinct was primed for action. This was no longer a chase. This was a confrontation. The call back to darkness was complete, and she was ready to answer it. Alina adjusted her jacket, the coin pressing coldly against her chest, a reminder that she was stepping fully back into a world she had left behind. The ridge had given her a clear vantage point of the compound, and the path down was as familiar as it was treacherous. Every footstep was deliberate, measured. She had approached hundreds of facilities like this in her life, though few had been traps orchestrated by someone who had once been her mentor, her commander, and the closest thing she had ever called a friend. Her descent toward the main highway was slow and calculated. Each switchback of the dirt road allowed her to observe the valley below, scanning for movement, for shadows, for any sign that the commander had anticipated her approach. But even in the morning's muted light, danger moved with intent. Her peripheral vision caught the glint of headlights appearing in the distance. One, then two, then three vehicles converged toward her path, their speed controlled, almost surgical. Her pulse did not quicken. Her breathing remained calm, even. This was no ordinary pursuit. It was a test, a warning, a challenge. Her mind raced, calculating distances, estimating speeds, projecting potential trajectories. The first vehicle, a black SUV, closed the distance quickly, attempting to box her in against the rocky ridge. A second car mirrored her movements behind her, while a third cut off the far lane, forcing her truck into a tighter corridor. Classical tactics, box-in maneuvers. She had studied these in training exercises, and now she was on the receiving end. But her years in naval special warfare had taught her one immutable rule: never panic, never predictably react, and always make the next move count. She slowed slightly, letting the front SUV close, then quickly swerved onto a narrow side path leading toward a shallow gully. The rear vehicle responded immediately, but Alina had calculated the angle precisely. She could leverage the terrain to create separation. A rock-lined incline provided a momentary barrier, forcing one of the pursuers to overshoot and momentarily lose coordination. Even as she maneuvered, her eyes scanned for further opportunities. She noted the tires of each pursuing vehicle, all-terrain, designed for desert driving, professional grade. These were trained hands, operators, not mere goons. Someone with experience, someone she had once trusted, or someone who knew her moves intimately. The implication sent a chill, not of fear, but of recognition. This was more than an ambush. This was a challenge designed specifically for Alina, a tactical puzzle meant to test her limits. The first SUV rammed her rear bumper in a calculated, intimidating maneuver. Alina gritted her teeth, countering with a precise turn that allowed the SUV's momentum to carry it slightly off balance. Dust and gravel flew into the air, obscuring her movements. The second SUV tried to overtake her on the inside of the dirt road, but Alina anticipated the move, jerking the wheel sharply to the right, causing the pursuing vehicle to momentarily veer off into the shoulder. Her training kicked in with flawless precision. Breathing controlled, pulse steady, she executed maneuvers that would have made even the most seasoned drivers flinch. Every turn, every shift of her weight was calculated not just to evade, but to gauge the skill and intent of her pursuers. These were not random attackers. They were deliberate, precise, and dangerous. A sudden jolt rocked her truck. The first SUV slammed into her side again, attempting to force her off the road. Alina pressed her foot harder on the accelerator, using the vehicle's momentum to navigate a tight switchback, swinging the truck wide enough that the SUV's bumper clipped a rock, sending a shower of debris into the air. The driver cursed under his breath, realizing that he was dealing with someone far beyond ordinary skill. But she couldn't focus solely on evasion. Every move had to consider the endgame, the facility ahead, the commander waiting, and the risk of drawing unwanted attention. She needed a path through the ambush that preserved her ability to confront the situation at its core. The vehicles behind her began to adjust. Two attempted to flank from different angles, coordinating their approach like a hunting pack. Alina's mind moved faster than the vehicles. She spotted a narrow ravine along the side of the road, barely navigable by her truck, but enough to force one of the pursuers to slow drastically. She calculated the speed, angle, and distance, then executed a controlled drift, swinging her truck into the ravine's entrance. The pursuer misjudged the width and clipped the edge, causing it to scrape violently against the rocks. Sparks flew, tires screeched, and the vehicle skidded slightly off course. She wasn't done. The third SUV tried to intercept by accelerating from behind. Alina shifted gears, expertly controlling the throttle, and timed a sharp right turn to create a gap between herself and the pursuing vehicle. The combination of terrain and precision driving gave her a momentary advantage. She glanced at the rearview mirror, noting the second SUV had recovered, now moving faster, more aggressive. Her mind switched gears seamlessly from vehicle tactics to physical confrontation strategy. She anticipated that the pursuit would not end on the road. If they followed into the facility, she needed to be ready to engage in close quarters. Her hands drifted briefly to the small combat knife strapped to her thigh, the familiar weight grounding her focus. She would need every ounce of skill honed from years of survival, combat, and tactical operations. Then the unthinkable happened. A fourth vehicle appeared, cutting off the narrow path she had used to evade the first SUVs. This was no coincidence. The commander had anticipated her maneuvers. He had orchestrated a near-perfect ambush, and the situation escalated beyond a mere test. Alina's mind shifted into overdrive. She slammed her foot on the brake and simultaneously jerked the steering wheel to the right, sending the truck skidding sideways along the gravel. One of the pursuing vehicles collided with the rear, another overshot and barely regained control. A cloud of dust enveloped the path, obscuring visibility. In the chaos, Alina made a split-second decision. She would exit the main road entirely and head toward an unmarked service path leading toward the ridge behind the facility. The move was risky. She could easily become trapped, but the element of unpredictability was her only advantage. The truck bounced and slid along the rough terrain, rocks digging into the tires, dust coating her windshield. She navigated with precision, every second measured, every angle calculated. Her pursuers were skilled, but none could match the combination of instinct, training, and intimate knowledge of such terrain that Alina possessed. Within minutes, the vehicles behind her had scattered, struggling to maintain coordination on the rocky path. Alina pressed forward, using the natural contours of the landscape to her advantage, moving faster and more deliberately with each turn. The ambush had revealed their capabilities and limitations. She now knew enough to anticipate their tactics inside the facility. Her heart remained steady. Adrenaline coursed through her veins, sharpening her senses. She could hear the distant sound of tires on gravel, see shadows in the dust clouds, and anticipate the next movements. She wasn't just surviving the ambush, she was learning from it, preparing for the confrontation that lay ahead. Finally, she reached a point where the path opened into a dry riverbed, providing temporary cover and concealment. She slowed, allowing the dust to settle, and surveyed the valley below. The facility loomed in the distance, fortified and silent, yet alive with unseen watchers. Alina touched the coin in her pocket, R13, Mission 13. It had been a test, a message, a lure. She was no longer being pursued on the highway. She had moved into the zone where the real challenge awaited. The commander's trap had failed to eliminate her, but it had achieved its purpose, drawing her back into the world she had spent years leaving behind. She exhaled, focusing on the next step. The ambush had been brutal, precise, and relentless, but it had also revealed her strength, her skill, and her resolve. She was ready. The facility awaited, and with it, answers, danger, and confrontation. The valley lay stretched before her, an intricate maze of sand, rocks, and abandoned structures leading to the facility. The sun had climbed higher, and the harsh morning light carved long shadows across the terrain. But Alina moved through the shadows with fluid grace, every step silent, every movement deliberate. She had survived ambushes, firefights, and impossible scenarios, but today's mission was unlike any other. It was personal. The commander, the man she had once trusted implicitly, was alive, orchestrating this intricate game, and it was up to her to navigate it on her terms. Alina crouched behind a cluster of jagged rocks, surveying the compound. The facility was massive, a complex of low-lying buildings connected by high fences and narrow walkways. She noted guard movements, 2 men patrolling a perimeter with disciplined cadence, another stationed near a distant entrance, and several more near the central tower, their movements precise, trained. This wasn't a random outpost. It was operational, and someone wanted her inside alive, guiding her into the labyrinth of their design. The coin in her pocket burned against her side, a reminder of a past she had never truly left. R13. Mission 13. A mission erased from records, erased from memory, yet here it was, woven into the present like a breadcrumb trail. Someone knew what it meant. Someone had planned this carefully, using knowledge of her past to manipulate her, to test her. The commander. Alina took a deep breath, centering herself. Every scenario she had trained for, every survival drill, every tactical maneuver converged into this moment. She moved like a shadow, slipping between rocks, using the terrain to mask her approach. Each step was measured, calculated to avoid detection. As she neared the perimeter fence, she observed the security measures. Motion sensors strategically placed, cameras positioned at every angle, and patrols synchronized in perfect timing. The first challenge was clear: bypass the sensors without triggering an alarm. Her fingers brushed against her pack, retrieving a small EMP device she had carried for situations exactly like this. A pulse of electricity neutralized the nearby cameras, giving her a narrow window to move forward. The fence was next, a low, electrified barrier. Alina carefully traced the wiring, knotting the gaps where insulation had worn thin. With precision, she cut a small section of the wiring and slipped through, the metal of the fence pressing against her boots. On the other side, the compound opened like a stage, empty and silent, yet alive with tension. Her eyes darted to the central tower. This was the heart of the facility, where she expected to find answers, danger, or both. But the path was not simple. Guards shifted, their movements deliberate, covering entrances and exits. She used shadows, cover, and speed to navigate the courtyard, each movement calculated to minimize exposure. A sudden noise made her pause, a subtle shift of sand, the faint click of a boot against concrete. Alina pressed herself against the shadow of a building, muscles coiled, senses sharp. From the corner of her eye, she saw a figure emerge, a man in tactical gear, armed but moving with hesitation, almost testing her reactions. Alina's hand moved instinctively to her knife. She didn't attack, didn't make a sound. She allowed the man to pass, noting his reaction, slight widening of eyes, a flash of recognition before he disappeared behind another building. These were trained operatives, but they were also human, capable of hesitation, error, and misjudgment. She continued, weaving through the shadows, moving closer to the central tower. Her phone buzzed. A single message, no words, only a photo. The same coin placed on a map of the facility, a single red dot marking a location near the central tower. Her stomach tightened. The commander was not just orchestrating her approach, He was guiding her, manipulating the flow of the mission, watching every move. She felt a mixture of irritation and intrigue. He had always been a strategist, capable of predicting moves, anticipating reactions. And now he had drawn her into a game only he could fully control. Alina approached a side entrance to the central tower. It was reinforced, but not beyond her skills. She tapped the door with a precise combination of leverage and force, disengaging the locking mechanism without triggering alarms. The door creaked open just enough for her to slip inside, the air cool and stale, a stark contrast to the desert heat outside. Inside, the tower was a maze of corridors, offices, and storage rooms. Her footsteps were silent against the concrete floor. She moved with purpose, scanning every doorway, listening for signs of life, any hint of traps. Each corridor seemed empty, but her instincts told her otherwise. Someone was watching. Someone always watched. A faint sound reached her ears, the soft click of boots against metal. Alina froze, pressing herself against a wall. Two figures appeared around the corner, moving in tandem, armed and alert. She recognized the formation instantly. Standard close-quarters tactics, designed to corner and suppress an intruder. Alina's training took over. She counted steps, estimated distance, calculated angles. When they entered the hallway fully, she moved with precision, a swift sweep of the knife, a controlled elbow strike, and a twist of momentum. One man dropped silently, incapacitated but alive. The other followed moments later, unconscious on the floor. Not a sound escaped. Her heart remained steady. She could feel the coin in her pocket, the reminder of past missions, past failures, and past victories. R13. This was the culmination of all of it. As she continued deeper into the tower, the corridors narrowed. Security cameras had been disabled by the EMP earlier, but subtle indicators told her the commander had anticipated her route. Tripwires, pressure sensors, even small vents that allowed observation. She moved cautiously, aware that every step could trigger a response. Then she reached a small, reinforced door at the heart of the tower. Her instincts screamed that this was the command center, the place where the commander had orchestrated the ambush, where he waited. She pressed her hand to the cold metal handle, pausing for a moment. This was the threshold. Beyond this door lay the confrontation she had been drawn toward for months, maybe years. Her phone buzzed once more. A single message, simple and chilling: "Welcome home, Reaper." Alina inhaled, exhaled, and pushed the door open, stepping into the room. The shadows shifted. The faint hum of electronics filled the space. And then she saw him, tall, imposing, calm, the commander, standing behind a console, watching her with a mixture of amusement and calculation. Her eyes narrowed. Every muscle in her body was ready, every instinct sharpened. She had been called back into the darkness, and now the darkness was waiting for her. The command center was dimly lit, filled with the low hum of computers, monitors casting a cold glow across the room. Alina stepped inside, boots silent against the polished floor, eyes locked on the figure standing near the console. The commander, Jonathan Vale, was as she remembered, tall, composed, with an almost predatory calm that unsettled even the most seasoned operators. His eyes, sharp and calculating, followed her every move. "Alina," he said smoothly, voice echoing slightly in the confined space, "I wondered how long it would take for you to follow the trail." She kept her stance relaxed but ready, the coin in her jacket pocket burning against her chest, a constant reminder of what had been erased and what was coming back. "Vale," she said evenly, "I should have known you'd be alive. You've always been impossible to track when you want to be." He smiled faintly, a subtle curve that spoke of amusement, confidence, and danger. "I didn't come back to be found, Reaper. I came back because there are things only you can handle, and because I wanted to see if you still have what it takes." Her fingers brushed against the knife at her thigh, a reflexive reminder that words alone never protected her. "I'm not here to play your games," she said. "I need answers. Who were those men? Why the coin? Why now?" Vale leaned against the console, folding his arms casually as though he had all the time in the world. Those men were messengers, tests. They were trained to observe, to provoke, to gauge your reaction. And the coin, he paused, a shadow of nostalgia in his expression, is a reminder of a mission that never should have ended the way it did. Mission 13, Reaper. You remember it. Alina's eyes narrowed. Mission 13 had been one of the deadliest she had ever undertaken. Every operative involved had been presumed lost, and the operation itself was buried, officially non-existent. The coin had been her proof of survival, her bond with the team that had risked everything together. That someone had resurfaced, it meant the commander knew exactly how to draw her out. "Why bring me back into this?" she demanded, her voice rising slightly. "I left that world behind. I'm done with this life." Vale's gaze hardened, intensity cutting through the dim light. "Done. Alina, there's no such thing. You and I both know that once you've been Reaper, once you've walked in shadows most will never understand, you can't just step away. The world you left behind isn't waiting quietly. It's moving, evolving, and there are consequences if we don't intervene." Her mind raced, piecing together fragments of his words. There was more at stake than just her, more than just a personal vendetta. He had orchestrated this entire scenario, from the ambush on the highway to the tests at the compound. And it was clear, he didn't just want her back, he needed her for something beyond personal closure. Before she could respond, Vale tapped a few keys on the console. A map appeared on the central monitor, dotted with red and blue markers, lines connecting points across the city, across military installations, across unknown territories. "I'm not here to threaten you," he said calmly. "I'm here to prepare you. The threat you just saw, it's only the beginning. There's a network moving in the shadows, far beyond what you've faced before, and they've begun to make their moves." Alina leaned closer to the monitor, scanning the connections, tracing patterns, recognizing operational structures that only someone with her experience could decode. It was intricate, sophisticated, and lethal. Her pulse remained steady, but the cold clarity of danger settled in her mind. Whoever these operatives were, they had resources, reach, and intent, and Vale was positioning her to intercept, to counter, to survive. "You could have warned me without all the theatrics," she said, tone biting. "The men, the ambush, it was unnecessary. I could have assessed the threat differently." Vale's smile returned, faint but knowing. "Unnecessary, perhaps, but it was necessary for you to remember who you are, Reaper. You can't fight shadows if you've forgotten how to move in the dark. You can't command precision if you've grown soft in comfort. That's why the test was essential." Alina exhaled slowly, absorbing his words, feeling the cold burn of truth beneath them. He was right. Retirement had dulled her reflexes, her instincts. Her body remembered the motions, but her mind needed to re-engage. And Vale knew it. A soft chime from the console drew her attention. Vale tapped the screen, bringing up a new set of data. Videos, communications, and satellite feeds scrolled rapidly. He pointed to one of the feeds, a convoy moving through a remote desert highway, armed vehicles transporting what appeared to be high-value cargo. "This is your first target," he said. "A cell we've been tracking for months. They've been involved in operations that could destabilize critical sectors. You're going in alone. Precision is key. You make one mistake and it's over." Alina's jaw tightened. She had always worked in teams, trusted operators watching her six, but Vale's plan required solitude, reliance on her own skill. She didn't flinch. She had survived alone before. She could do it again. "Time frame?" she asked, voice steady. 24 hours, Vale replied. "After that, they disappear into the network, and once they vanish, the opportunity is gone. You will need to move fast, think faster, and act decisively." Her fingers grazed the coin again, feeling the cold metal ground her focus. R13. Mission 13. She was stepping back into a world of shadows where every decision was a matter of life and death, and where trust was a currency few could afford. Vale's presence, his orchestrations, and the high-stakes mission all confirmed one truth. She could not leave, she could not retreat, and she could not fail. "Where do I start?" she asked, her tone controlled but firm. Vale gestured toward the monitor, highlighting the convoy's route, patterns, and weak points. "Here, you have multiple points of infiltration. Use terrain, timing, and misdirection. Remember everything, every skill, every tactic, every lesson you've ever learned. You're going to need all of it." Alina studied the plan silently, committing every detail to memory. Her mind raced through contingencies, alternate routes, reaction to resistance, extraction points, surveillance avoidance. This was her arena and she knew it. Vale's gaze softened slightly, the tension between mentor and operative palpable. "One more thing, Reaper," he said. "This isn't just about stopping them. It's about sending a message. You'll need to move with precision, leave nothing behind, and make sure they understand that crossing paths with you, or me, is a mistake they cannot afford to repeat." She nodded, acknowledging the weight of responsibility. The room fell silent except for the hum of the electronics. Alina touched the coin once more, feeling its symbolism, its warning, and its call to action. In that moment she understood fully. The commander's game was larger than her, larger than any one mission. It was about strategy, precision, and survival, and she was at the center of it. Night had fallen over the desert, blanketing the terrain in darkness that Alina could navigate as easily as daylight. The hum of her truck's engine was muffled against the sand and rocks, her eyes scanning the horizon, analyzing every rise and depression of the desert floor. The convoy Vale had highlighted on the monitor earlier was moving along a predictable route, heavily guarded but overconfident, assuming no one could intercept them in such desolate terrain. Alina knew better. She parked her truck on a ridge overlooking the convoy's path, the metal of the coin pressing against her chest, a grounding reminder of who she was: Reaper, a survivor, a hunter. Her rifle rested across her lap, a lightweight sniper optimized for precision shots over long distances. She breathed slowly, allowing her mind to process the terrain, the convoy formation, the guard rotations, and the weak points Vale had highlighted. Every detail mattered. Every misstep could mean death. The first vehicle came into view, headlights cutting through the desert darkness. Alina adjusted her scope, confirming positions of each armed guard and noting the spacing between vehicles. The convoy moved like a living organism, careful yet oblivious to the predator watching from above. Her pulse remained steady. Adrenaline sharpened her focus but did not control it. This was her element: calculated risk, precision, patience. She tapped her earpiece, connecting briefly with Vale. His distorted voice was calm, almost approving. "Eyes on target." "Confirmed," she replied. "All positions accounted for, ready to engage on your mark." "Good," Vale said. "Remember, it's about precision. Take them down cleanly, leave nothing to chance. One mistake and they'll scatter or retaliate." Alina exhaled, aligning the crosshairs over the first guard. Her finger hovered gently on the trigger, muscles coiled like springs. She fired. A single, clean shot, and the guard slumped silently. The rifle's suppressor muffled the impact, leaving only the sound of shifting sand and distant wind. The convoy did not yet realize they were under attack. She moved quickly, shifting her aim to the second vehicle. Timing was everything. The guards inside were trained, alert, but her training surpassed theirs. Each shot was deliberate, each movement calculated to disable without alerting the rest of the convoy immediately. The desert echoed with the quiet precision of her actions. Minutes passed, though it felt like hours. One by one, Alina neutralized the convoy's front vehicles, cutting communications and disabling engines without creating chaos. Her knowledge of military tactics allowed her to predict movements, anticipate reactions, and manipulate the battlefield from a distance. The coin in her pocket vibrated subtly against her chest, as though syncing with her heartbeat, reminding her of the past missions that had forged her. R13. Mission 13. She drew strength from it, channeling every instinct honed through years of survival and combat. Then the unexpected happened. A heavier armored vehicle, not part of Vale's original intel, veered off the main path. Its movements were deliberate, aggressive, suggesting that someone had anticipated the strike. Alina's pulse quickened. This was no longer just a convoy, it was a trap designed to test her limits further. She adjusted her position, finding higher ground on a rock outcropping. From there, she could oversee the armored vehicle's approach while maintaining a safe angle. Her mind raced through contingencies, explosives, ambush points, reinforcements. Every option had to be accounted for. The vehicle fired its first shot, a warning flare that illuminated the desert for a brief moment. Alina's shadow stretched across the sand, a reminder that she was visible but she remained calm. She adjusted the scope, took a deep breath, and fired. A precise shot disabled the driver, the vehicle coming to a halt in the sand. She moved to the next target, guards exiting the vehicle in surprise, neutralizing them swiftly with minimal noise, her movements fluid and controlled. Her earpiece buzzed again. Vale's voice, calm but with a hint of urgency, reached her. "They knew you were coming sooner than I expected. Finish the operation. Exfil in 20 minutes. Extraction point coordinates uploaded." Alina scanned the remaining vehicles. 2 stragglers, lightly armed, were attempting to retreat down a side path. She took careful aim, ensuring that both would be incapacitated but not destroyed, leaving them alive enough to convey a message if needed. Her shots were surgical, her timing flawless. The desert returned to silence, save for the wind and the faint hum of the disabled engines. She moved to exfiltrate, following the coordinates Vale had provided. The terrain was rough, but her experience allowed her to navigate it efficiently. She maintained situational awareness, scanning for any pursuing vehicles or hidden operatives. The desert was empty, but Alina knew better than to assume safety. As she approached the extraction point, a faint movement caught her eye, a figure observing her from a ridge several hundred meters away. Her rifle instinctively raised, scope aligning, but she paused. The figure was familiar, her breath caught. The silhouette was unmistakable, Vale himself. He stepped forward into the moonlight, hands raised in a gesture of non-threat. "Impressive," he said softly. "You've adapted quickly. Your timing, precision, and efficiency, it's exactly as I expected." Alina lowered her rifle slowly, muscles still tense, eyes wary. "Why are you here? This was supposed to be my mission. You said I was alone." "I wanted to see it with my own eyes," Vale replied, stepping closer. "There's a lesson here, Reaper. Even when alone, you are never truly isolated. Strategy, foresight, and skill are what define survival, not numbers or backup. You've proven that tonight." She studied him, searching for hidden motives for betrayal. His calm demeanor was unnerving, yet she trusted the results of her own actions. She had completed the strike, neutralized the convoy, and survived a potential trap. Every measure of success rested on her skill alone. Vale handed her a small, encrypted device. Data from the convoy's systems, the network's operations, contacts, and locations. "This is your next step. The threat is far from over. You've only scratched the surface." Alina took the device, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. "And the commander?" she asked, her tone cautious. "You're still orchestrating all of this. Why me?" Vale's eyes softened slightly. "Because you are the best. Because you can handle what others cannot. And because, Reaper, history has taught me that when the stakes are highest, it's always the shadows that determine the outcome. You've proven tonight that you belong in those shadows." She exhaled, letting the adrenaline fade slightly, but her mind was already moving ahead. Extraction was near, but the mission was far from over. Vale had given her tools, data, and direction, but the real work, dismantling the network, confronting the full scope of the threat, was only beginning. As they moved toward the extraction point, the desert night stretched endlessly around them, filled with danger, uncertainty, and the unyielding weight of the mission. Alina understood that this was more than a strike. It was a message, a test, and a prelude to a battle that would demand every ounce of her skill, every shred of her courage, and every lesson she had learned as Reaper. The desert was unrecognizable now. Hours ago it had been a quiet stretch of broken rock and flat sand, a place where wind moaned over an empty horizon. Now it was a war zone, one created by the choices of 5 men who thought threatening a woman with a gun would be the easiest crime of their lives. They had no idea who she was. They had no idea who she had been trained by. They had no idea what the words Navy SEAL truly meant. Not the movies, not the posters, not the myths. The real thing. And they had finally learned. But the night wasn't over yet. The surviving 2 kidnappers, Tyler Briggs and the older one called Mason, were scrambling through the jagged gully, tripping over the debris from their overturned truck. It still lay burning upside down, smoke twisting into the black sky like a warning signal. Lena pursued them, but not in rage. She moved with calculation, with control, with the lethal calm of someone who has spent a lifetime earning the right to remain composed under violent pressure. Every step was deliberate, every breath quiet. She didn't chase them because she wanted revenge. She chased them because they were desperate, wounded, and armed. And desperate armed men were the most dangerous kind. A buzzing sound hummed through the distance, growing louder. A helicopter. Briggs heard it too. He whirled around, wild-eyed. "They're coming for you," he screamed into the darkness. "Feds, military, I don't know who the hell you are, but they must really want you back." Lena didn't answer. Instead, she slipped behind a fallen slab of sandstone as the helicopter's searchlight cut across the landscape like a blade of white fire. It wasn't military. It wasn't local law enforcement. No, this was a federal tactical bird, matte black, noise-reduced rotors, and an unmistakable silhouette. A helicopter you didn't call unless the situation was so unstable, so escalated, that handling it quietly was the only option. Briggs panicked, firing blindly toward the light. A rookie mistake. Lena slid behind him with silent precision, sweeping his legs from under him before he could even register the movement. He hit the ground with a grunt, and she pinned him effortlessly, disarming him with a twist that made him scream. "You don't fire at aircraft," she said softly. "You don't know who you're inviting to the party." Mason bolted for higher ground. But higher ground didn't help against a spotlight that could cut through fog, sandstorms, and darkness equally. The beam fixed on him instantly. He froze, blinded. A voice boomed through the helicopter's loudspeaker. "Hold it right there, hands up." Mason obeyed instantly. He had finally run out of luck, breath, and courage. Lena stood, dragging Briggs up with one hand like he weighed nothing. His face twisted with fear and disbelief. "You, who the hell are you?" he rasped. Lena looked at him for a long moment. Then she answered simply. "Someone you never should have pointed a gun at." The helicopter lands. The helicopter touched down with a burst of sand and rotor wash, creating a miniature sandstorm around them. A squad of tactical agents in dark uniforms emerged, weapons lowered but ready. Leading them was a tall woman with clipped gray hair, sharp eyes, and a jawline that radiated the kind of authority earned through decades of command. Director Sarah Halifax. As her boots hit the sand, Briggs suddenly understood. Not only had they picked the wrong victim, they had picked the most dangerous one possible. Halifax approached Lena first, her expression stern, but relieved. "You weren't supposed to be out here alone," Halifax said sharply. Lena forced a grin. "Well, I had company." Halifax glanced at the captured men, then at the overturned truck. "Let me guess, they started it." Lena answered with a shrug. "They tried." Halifax exhaled, somewhere between annoyance and admiration. "You know, you're retired. You're allowed to call for backup like a normal human being." "I was very busy," Lena replied dryly, "being abducted." Halifax muttered something that sounded suspiciously like a curse. "The arrest." The agents restrained Mason and Briggs, reading them their charges. The list was long enough to echo: kidnapping, armed assault, interstate transport of a hostage, attempted murder, aggravated battery, and several federal violations involving weapons. Briggs trembled as they cuffed him. "We didn't know," he babbled. "We didn't know who she was." Halifax didn't even look at him. Ignorance doesn't cancel consequences. Mason tried to speak too. It wasn't supposed to. She wasn't supposed to fight like a seal, Halifax finished, raising an eyebrow. Mason swallowed hard. "You threatened the wrong woman," Halifax continued. "Believe me, prison is the best outcome you could hope for tonight." The two men were hauled toward the helicopter, shaking. Lena watched silently. A quiet moment. When the chaos settled, Halifax placed a hand on Lena's shoulder. "You okay?" Lena nodded. "I've been through worse." "I know," Halifax said gently. "That's what worries me." Lena gave a small smile. "I didn't want them to hurt anyone else." Halifax studied her for a moment, something unspoken passing between them. She finally nodded. "That's why we trust you," she said. "That's why we came." Lena looked at the horizon, where dawn was beginning to paint the desert in pale gold. The world was quiet again. But she knew the quiet never lasted. The Admiral ARRIVS. A second vehicle approached from the east. Not loud, not dramatic, just steady and purposeful. Lena stiffened with surprise. From the SUV stepped Admiral Keaton, her former commanding officer, the man who had signed her retirement papers, but who had never stopped looking out for her. "Admiral," Lena blinked. "How did you?" "You think a federal alert with your name doesn't reach my desk," Keaton snapped, but his voice softened. "I had to see it for myself, had to make sure you were still in one piece." Lena folded her arms. "I'm fine." Keaton's eyes swept the overturned truck, the subdued kidnappers, the tactical team, and the burn marks on the sand. "Clearly." Halifax stepped forward. "She handled herself." Keaton smirked. "She always has." He turned to Lena, voice lower. "But I'll ask anyway, you ready to come back in? Even a little. Advisory work, nothing dangerous. Or at least nothing this dangerous." Lena shook her head slowly. "No, Admiral, I'm done. I meant it." Keaton exhaled. "Then promise me something." "What?" "Stop making the federal response team race you to your own kidnappings." Lena laughed. For the first time that night, truly laughed. The final lesson. As the helicopter lifted, carrying the arrested men away, dawn finally broke across the desert. The wind carried the last traces of smoke upward, blending them with the warming sky. Halifax turned to Lena one last time. "You know what those men learned tonight?" she asked. Lena raised a brow. "What?" "That Navy SEALs don't retire." Lena smirked. "We just get bored." Halifax shook her head, fighting a smile as she headed back to the chopper. Lena stood alone for a moment, letting the rising sun hit her face. She didn't need applause. She didn't need medals. She didn't need recognition. All she needed was the quiet certainty that, somewhere tonight, those men had learned a lesson they would never forget. Never point a gun at someone who has spent her entire life learning exactly what to do when someone pulls a trigger. And above all, never ever threaten a Navy SEAL.